Hi there. Thanks for joining this video or podcast. My name is David Cruickshank. I'm a principal at Edge International. We do consulting and work and strategy work with law firms. One of my areas is leadership development, leadership training, and we also do coaching for leaders. My topic today is on how to run a remote work meeting. And this is based on an article I wrote last month at the beginning of the pandemic on this very topic because leaders are having to deal with Zoom, WebEx, and other types of remote work meetings. And we've put together a number of tips in that article, and I'm going to briefly run through them in this video and podcast. This article is available in the Edge International communique, and I'll give you a reference to where to find that later on. In the pandemic, as I said, leaders have got to adapt to these new platforms for meetings, and they're different from the ones we're used to. And I want to focus on what's different about these meetings and why it's important to lead them effectively if you are a leader. It does matter. Let's talk about why these are different. First of all, they're not like a live meeting where you can get better interaction, read body language, see people raise their hands. You're looking at a little postage stamps in Zoom or WebEx. You cannot gauge people's reactions as easily. There's not much rapport building before the meeting because people are not entering a meeting room. There are difficulties sometimes with technical glitches. However, there are some advantages that I'll come to later on, and it is important to tackle the differences. The other big difference is that people are used to using this type of platform informally, almost as social media or with family calls. You need to make a clear distinction between a formal business meeting that you're holding and the informal uses that you might use in your private life. So let's turn to the overall outline of what I'm going to tackle today. First of all, I'm going to talk about preparation, some IT and tech tips. Secondly, the importance of a timed, annotated agenda. I'm going to discuss different agenda item types. And then I'm going to talk about how to lead discussion with what I call the DDAPS acronym: discussion, decision, action, person, and summary. Finally, I'll close with some useful features that aren't available in normal video or conference calls. And I think you'll find these useful in post-pandemic meetings as well. Let me start then with preparation. Your first call is to your IT department to talk to them about the features of the platform that you're going to be using. You don't have to be an IT expert, but you do need to know how to do things like share a screen, how to direct people to mute and unmute. And the best thing you can do is prepare a single tech tips page, working with your IT people, very simple instructions on how you're going to start meetings with everybody on mute, how people can unmute, how they can find the mute and unmute switch on their laptops if they haven't figured this out already. You'll also indicate that you're going to start on time, and you'll attach to the tech tips a detailed timed agenda. The other preparation you need to do is a little bit of rehearsal yourself with the platform so that you know when to seek people's comments and how to bring them into the meeting. Let me now turn to preparation of your agenda. The agenda should be a written agenda. The items should be timed. So in a 45 to 60-minute meeting, you would put that timing on each agenda item. You'd list the agenda item. You'd also list any presenter who's leading on that. Finally, there would be an annotation, and I'm going to talk about the annotation as either an information item or a discussion and decision item in a moment. So with that timed agenda sent out in advance, we recommend that you send the meeting notice 5 to 7 days ahead with the agenda and the tech tips. And again, send it the morning of the meeting so people have it handy. They've got the Zoom connection, they've got the tech tips, and they're ready to go with their agenda as well. Now let me turn to what I mean by this timed informed agenda. A timed informed agenda looks a little bit like this. It's got three main types of agenda items: an opening, it's got information items, and it's what I call DDAPS items, that is discussion, decision, action, and summary. So I'm going to talk about each of these in turn. First of all, openings. Openings are the warm up, the kind of thing that you do in the meeting that is the equivalent of what you would do as people enter the room and they chat to each other. But you have to establish some kind of opening rapport question. And this is best done using the chat function. So you might start off with a question right off the top and ask people to enter into chat. If they're working from home, you might ask something like, what are you seeing outside your window this morning? And people will type in from different locations. A more business type of thing might be tell us about a business development success that your group or you individually have had recently. I've seen people also start off by saying, what have you learned to cook in the past week? So those are all things as sort of warm-ups, and that's your opening. That usually takes 3 or 4 minutes. People enter their comments in chat. You can say something about those comments. There are sometimes some very humorous ones. And then you're ready to say, all right, we're ready to start the meeting. You start the opening right on time. You get to the business part of the agenda probably 3 or 4 minutes later. You'll then move to what I call an information item. It's usually a good lead off to get people used to the idea of how to use an information item. An information item might be something like a financial report or a report that you've already circulated from a committee member. And it's really just to bring people up to date. It's not for discussion or comment in the live meeting. A lot of time gets wasted on items that are information, and people start commenting and questioning them, and it does not get you to the important meat of the meeting. And so in this case, I would recommend that you label something like a financial report an information item. So how do people respond to that? You invite them to respond in chat. So if they have a comment or they have a question, they type it in chat, or you can invite them to send you a separate email. You'll have a note taker. Those things will be recorded. You can then respond to any comments later in chat. Everybody gets to see those comments in chat as they come in as well. The key part of the meeting, though, is about discussion items. So let me talk about some of those. Discussion items mean DDAPs, that is discussion, decision, action, person, and summary. I'm going to tackle each of these in turn. So if it's a discussion item, you're going to entertain discussion and you're going to ask for a speakers list. So they'll use the hands up tool in the web platform, or they will actually physically raise their hand. That's what we do in our own global meetings on Zoom. Then, as chair, you're going to keep a speakers list and say, I've got this person, then this person, then this person, and you'll go to them in turn. They will then each unmute, say what they have to say, mute again, and then you'll move to the next person. You may have to remind people, please mute your microphone. You don't want to hear the dogs barking, the background traffic, etc. So after discussion and you sense that we're ready for a decision, I find in most law firms, and I've run many meetings in law firms and law school faculties, and the most dreaded of all, a condominium board, at some point you have to declare there's a consensus or a decision that has to come to a vote. And so you'll declare what you think the consensus is, ask if there are any further comments or objections, and then declare that decision done and dusted. You'll now move to action. What has to happen next? So let's take the example of a decision to hire an attorney in the litigation department. Everyone has already seen the resumes. Everyone has discussed this before. There seems to be a consensus that yes, we're going to hire that attorney. And you say that seems to be the consensus. The next step I'd like to take is refer this to the diversity committee for their comments. That's a standard thing that we do here. And so I'm going to ask Josh to take this to the diversity committee where he's a member, and it'll come back to us at our next meeting for a final decision. So Josh has got that, and we'll be hearing at next meeting on a final decision to go ahead with that offer. I may call a short conference call to finalize that decision before our next regular meeting. So that's how you would handle a DDAPS decision: discussion, decision, action, person, and a summary. Now let me turn to some of the features that we're going to find in Zoom that are real advantages for the future. At the end of this pandemic, people are going to be sick of Zoom meetings and WebEx and so on, and you're going to have a brief pause. But think of some of the things we've learned, some of the advantages that are going to be there for future meetings. Client relations, for example, if you've had Zoom contacts with clients, and in the past you mostly had telephone calls, you found those perhaps quite engaging. And you might want to make a regular habit of a Zoom or WebEx call with a client and a couple of members of your team. Secondly, stronger teams. If you have cross practice or cross practice or cross city practices, you may well find it helpful to have a 30-minute Zoom call, bringing everybody together. We think that we're going to see more Zoom meetings after a bit of a respite, after this all comes to an end, and we're going to see improved client relations and cohesive platforms. So let me wrap up then and talk about why it's important again that the leader run an effective meeting. Like it or not, your reputation is going to suffer as a leader if you don't run an effective meeting. And whether it's an IT problem or a glitch in the discussion, if you don't have an agenda, if you don't have it organized, if you're not running a professional meeting, people are going to, by inference, blame you. And so you want to keep your reputation intact and indeed enhance your reputation by running remote work meetings extremely well. These will be an advertisement for using these platforms in the future by choice, not by necessity. And with the benefits of more cohesive teams and better client relations, your reputation as a leader will rise. It's been great to have you here today talking about running a remote working meeting. I'm going to now refer you to my email address if you want to, and you can also find it on www.edge-international.com. You'll find the article on this. And so you can see that this is on David at edge-international.com. And I look forward to hearing from you. And thanks for joining me today.